Hi, my name is Marna Seltzer, and I'm the director of Princeton University Concerts. I work in the music department, and I lead a team of people that bring exceptional musicians from all over the world to perform here at Princeton University. One part of our mission is to help build a better community through music, to facilitate meaningful connections between performers and audience members. This is one reason that I was very excited to speak with you today on the topic of the commons. The global pandemic has made our work much more challenging, and it's helped us reflect on the value of live in-person concerts. I'm speaking to you today from the beautiful Richardson Auditorium, where we host most of our artists. It's a gorgeous space with world-class acoustics, and even though the hall is now open again, audiences have waned, and I look forward to a full house as soon as gathering feels more safe. In March 2020, the performing arts came to a near stop, and our program was among those that scrambled to cancel events before abandoning the hope of a swift return to normal. It was truly unprecedented. Princeton University Concerts has been continually presenting concerts for more than 120 years, through 2 world wars and even the influenza pandemic at the start of the last century. In April of 1918, near the peak of the very first wave of that pandemic, the Philadelphia Orchestra played here in Richardson Auditorium under the legendary baton of Leopold Stokowski. The spring of 2020 was a complete shock. We had never faced anything quite like it. Almost overnight, gathering became dangerous. The essential work of our organization, the very heart of our mission, became a nexus of fear, uncertainty, and complexity. And we continue to talk about whether to gather, when to gather, where to gather, what it means to do so safely. It is easy to be overwhelmed by the details, logistics, communications, politics, and the morality of figuring out what to do next. When I step back from it all, I sometimes worry that we will lose sight of why we're working so hard to bring it back. Why this simple, gorgeous act of coming together to hear live music is important to our community and even our humanity. To me, the Commons is both a place and an idea. It's a forum where people come together to talk, to exchange ideas, to be social. And we are nothing if not social species. We need one another almost as much as we need water and air. Extreme isolation drives most people mad. To stay sane, to stay human, we gather. We come together to see each other, to feel things, and to be a part of something bigger. Our brains are keenly attuned to read the people around us. We're wired to pick up on their actions and their emotions. Rooms full of people take on a certain energy, and when there is a point of collective focus or concentration at a concert, the sense of belonging can blossom. It's exciting for everyone. Without concerts, we were scrambling for ways to sustain ourselves socially. At first, I have to admit, it was kind of exciting. When it comes to the arts and entertainment in the developed world, high-speed wireless has ushered in a golden age of access. We are more networked than ever, and the promise of connecting to each other through the arts and music specifically seemed really hopeful. I watched the Portuguese pianist Maria João Pires, who is famously reclusive, give a rare concert by candlelight in her home. I saw theater from London that would have required a transatlantic flight in 2019. I took a tour of Prague from my couch, given by a guide who walked the city at night from the perspective of a plague doctor. I met a sheep farmer in Scotland who led a meditation while we watched her animals via Zoom. Given this level of access, you might think a global lockdown would barely register with people seeking community and cultural stimulation. To comfort myself while I worked alone, I started listening to Bach. Lots of Bach, every day. Bach streaming and looping and spiraling, played with an extraordinary energy and precision by one of my favorite pianists, the Icelandic superstar Víkingur Ólafsson. I was watching countless musicians perform from their living rooms. I was Zooming with old friends. I was discovering all sorts of new art. And yet, at some level, I was painfully aware, we were all painfully aware, that this was a poor substitute for the real thing. Every year, we sponsor a creative writing contest for Princeton University students. Last year's prompt was, "What has the music meant to you during the pandemic?" One of our winners, Maya Karen, a current senior, captured a vivid experience of live music, focusing my feeling of what had been lost for so many listeners. She wrote, "The velvety silence right before the musicians start to play. The visceral shock of sound rushing through your face, your limbs. The sense of warmth and awe, and a shakiness inside. Zoom has trouble matching the smack of live music. I feel I have lost sight of my power, my sense of inner assurance, my direction, my fire. I think perhaps I'm realizing my well-being relies on a communal web far more expansive than I ever imagined." So it's a bit ironic that it took a global lockdown in a hyper-connected age to remind many people just how special live in-person concerts can be. Of course, live performance has been at risk for more than a century. Generations of artists and presenters have had to defend their work against a rising tide of new technologies and convenient alternatives. The phonograph, radio, television, CDs, iPhones, YouTube, Spotify. Yet the market for live music persists, and I am excited and challenged to be working in this field at a moment when so many people are rediscovering just how much we need to experience live music as part of a group. It's odd when you think about it, what exactly compels us to invest the time, the money, and effort to leave home, gather with strangers, sit quietly in the dark, and literally feel the air vibrate. I'm not a scientist, but I have read a bit about what happens to the brain when we're part of a crowd with a shared focus. I mentioned it before, all of our social synapses start firing and the experience is more vibrant. Our mimetic instincts kick in. We produce and consume emotional energy in a feedback loop that tunes us to the crowd. This sympathetic resonance with our neighbors makes us feel like we're part of something bigger. It is a neural rush. These effects are apparent in all kinds of crowds, but the arts are unique, and music seems to have a special power to help us tap into our emotions. The author and neurologist Oliver Sacks wrote, "Music, uniquely among the arts, is both completely abstract and profoundly emotional. It has no power to represent anything particular or external, but it has a unique power to express inner states or feelings. Music can pierce the heart directly. It needs no mediation." This passage speaks to the essential intimacy of music, its ability to get inside our heads and our hearts. My colleague Scott Burnham, a Princeton professor emeritus, echoes this sentiment when he writes, "Can we doubt that music enjoys privileged access to our consciousness, often finding resonance of our surest sense of identity? We are undivided from ourselves when we are listening to our favorite music." Attending a live in-person concert is an exercise in extreme empathy, an invitation to feel the currents of profound emotion, both private and public, often at the same time. Jason Farago, the terrific art critic for the New York Times, recently wrote, "The function of art, Aristotle told us, is catharsis. You go to the theater, you listen to a symphony, you look at a painting, you watch a ballet, you laugh, you cry, you feel pity, fear, you see in others' lives a reflection of your own, and the catharsis comes, a cleansing, a clarity, a feeling of relief and understanding that you carry with you out of the theater or the concert hall. Art, music, drama, here is a point worth recalling in a pandemic, are instruments of psychic and social health. This psychic and social release feeds our spirit, and a concert can be like a religious experience in many ways. The stage glows like an altar. Here at Princeton, it helps that we are blessed with a concert hall that inspires a touch of awe in every audience and performer. The musician is a leader interpreting an important symbolic text. The rapt silence, the worshipful celebration, the dark. For avid fans, a concert can be a deeply meaningful communal practice. When I think about the public debate over the last few years about religious worship and whether those gatherings could be exempt from COVID restrictions, I wonder whether live music performance would ever be given that stature. There is little doubt in my mind that live concerts can offer enthusiastic listeners many of the benefits that congregants get from religious worship. Most significantly, this analogy between religious ritual and concert going extends to the notion of fellowship and community. We create, nourish, and sustain a community every time we attend a performance. I've been struck this fall by how many of our patrons have told me that they miss the people who sit near them at concerts. They may not know their names or enough about them to have stayed in touch with them over the past 2 years, but they miss them nonetheless. For the 2 hours that they sit together, they form and feel a mini community. They find connection with one another through music. That's the power of empathy and collective concentration. I firmly believe that artistic appreciation, aesthetic engagement, is a basic human characteristic that we all share, regardless of age, background, or experience. And when people share that with each other, they feel like they belong. At Princeton University Concerts, we have designed a program that builds on these parallels between music listening and mindful communal presence. In partnership with the Office of Religious Life, we created a live music meditation program where participants listen to music with guided meditation. It has been an incredibly successful and fertile collaboration. My colleague Matt Weiner, the Associate Dean of Religious Life, has helped me to understand that meditation at its best is more than a solitary act. It requires community. It may appear that you can meditate on your own, but ultimately you need others in your circle for the practice to work. It is fundamentally understood in Buddhist teachings that the communal experience is just as important as the teachings themselves. A university like Princeton is great in part because of the ways it brings people together, creating a vibrant mix of perspectives, ideas, talents, and stories. When you come to a concert here in Richardson, you feel all of that. You may have an undergraduate student attending a concert for the first time who sits next to a 30-year subscriber, or a 10-year-old budding violinist side by side with a graduate composer, score in hand. It is this intersection of people who come into the concert hall for their own personal reasons, but once there, have a collective experience. And the performers are part of this equation too. Every performer who comes to Princeton will tell you that there is nothing like connecting to an audience. But the mix of audience at Princeton is different than, say, performing at Carnegie Hall. It changes the way the performers play, the way they interpret the music, and their desire to give of themselves. Ed Dusenberry, the first violinist of the Takash String Quartet, a group that has performed at Princeton many times, has said, "The quality of listening in a hall can profoundly influence a performance as players. We are more likely to linger over a beautiful change of harmony or the last wisps of sound at the end of a slow movement if the hall is silent." Given the power of the performing arts to foster empathy, satisfy our social nature, build community, they are right at home in one of the world's leading research universities. Past President Shirley Tillman acknowledged as much in 2006 when she led Princeton to make a generational investment in the arts. "The arts are an essential part of Princeton's educational mission," she wrote, in part because they help students develop cognitive abilities and forms of intelligence that complement training in other disciplines. Those cognitive abilities and forms of intelligence are surely related to empathy and emotional sensitivity. We know that the arts alone will not solve the world's most pressing problems, but for any engineer, teacher, architect, or soldier who aims to lead a rich, impactful life, the arts are indispensable. In fact, the philosopher Martha Nussbaum has argued convincingly that the arts are essential to the flourishing of democracy precisely because they help us bridge apparent differences. The empathy sparked by great art compels us to see the world through fresh eyes. To the extent that we live in a divided time and are returning to the essential conversations about equality and justice, we might look to the arts as a kind of commons that can help us start to reweave the fabric of our communities. So today, even though many challenges remain ahead and COVID feels far from over, we have finally arrived at a moment when we can make more nuanced decisions about gathering. and we can start to let some of the activities that have been pushed to the side come back to life. I am optimistic. We are resilient and creative. The need for artists to express themselves through their art is timeless, as is our want to receive those gifts. We have to remember that intellectual and spiritual growth can occur in a concert hall just as it does in a classroom, a laboratory, a playing field, or a chapel. I think it's clear that we need music, we need to be with each other, we need to gather, and return to the commons. Finally, if all the power of music could be put into words, then this talk would be enough. But there is no substitute for music. So I want to end with an invitation. Please consider attending a concert as soon as it feels safe for you. You can find a full schedule of Princeton University Concerts events at puc.princeton.edu. And even though I've been focused on the series that I run, the music department also hosts hundreds of concerts of all kinds every year, and you can find their schedule at music.princeton.edu. Please join us to feel undivided from yourself and united with your fellow listeners. Thanks.